on for this president. Joining me now is political strategist Angela Rye and economist Jared Bernstein. Thank you both for being with us tonight.
Thank you, Reverend.
My pleasure.
Jared, let me go to you first. Tax fairness is a big part of what the president wants to get done. Take a look at this. There are many middle-class households that are actually paying a higher tax rate than households that make over $1 million a year because they don't get most of their money from investments. Will the president's policies change this problem?
They will, and they already are to some extent, but there's more to be done there, just like the president just said. In the deal that ended the fiscal cliff, the tax rate for, at least for folks at the very top of the income scale, above $450,000, on capital gains and dividends, okay, capital gains is what you get when you sell an appreciated stock. Its value goes up. Those are called capital gains. That went up from 15 to 20%. But, of course, 20% is already below the tax rate that folks at the top of the scale pay on their earnings. So the president's saying there's a lot more room there to close out some of those loopholes and deductions. You heard him mention carried interest, okay? That's a deal where a manager of a drugstore gets taxed at the rate of his earnings. A manager of a hedge fund gets those special privilege tax rates on the capital gains or the dividends.
Now, Angela, I know you're a political strategist, but you worked on the Hill with some of the Congress people that represented some of the more working class districts in the country. And this is not about class warfare. When you look at the fact that the bottom 20% of Americans only get 3% of all tax breaks, the top 20% get 66% of all tax breaks. We're talking about inequality here. We're not talking about class warfare, us against them. We're talking about fairness, Angela.
No, I think that's exactly right, Reverend Al. You have a president who's now demonstrating an ongoing commitment to not only economic fairness, but making sure that the playing field is level across the board. So we have a lot of work to do in this country with policymaking relative to both private sector and public sector protection of jobs.
You know, Reverend, let me make a comment about that. You know,
go ahead, Jared.
And it's a football analogy, so it's in season. Look, we've already got enough inequality coming out of the basic economy just from the market outcomes. But then when the tax system comes in and exacerbates those inequalities, make them worse, that sounds like unnecessary roughness. It's taking a situation that's already too unequal by historical terms, and it's doubling down on it.
But, Angela, when you go back to the Congress, where you worked for some time, I can't say years, you're not that old, but you worked for some time, and you look at the fact that Congress is talking deficit, sequester. The lead editorial in the New York Times, and Republicans forgive me for reading the New York Times, but it says in the lead editorial today, quote, Congress should be thinking about ways to accelerate the economy instead of remaining preoccupied with a short-term deficit. Job losses could be sharply reduced if half or more of the spending cuts were replaced by revenue increases, as President Obama and congressional Democrats have demanded. So what we're looking at is they're talking about cutting, which would really eliminate more jobs rather than accelerating the economy, Angela.
Right. I think we need to, drill down a little bit. Sequestration is the process by which automatic spending cuts take place. And a lot of folks are hearing this big word being thrown around and don't understand that that means immediate impact to their everyday lives. If sequestration were to happen, we're talking about necessary employees being furloughed from the federal government, people like the Border Patrol and folks like air safety and air safety workers. The other thing that we need to look at are the types of education programs that would be cut. We're talking special ed and Head Start. There are programs that we cannot afford to see gone or cut in any way, shape, or form with non-discretionary spending, which is a part of the sequestration process.
Jared, tomorrow the president's announced he's meeting with some CEOs from Wall Street, Goldman Sachs Group, Lloyd Blankfein, and Yahoo's Marissa Mayer and others. What can he achieve by meeting with them? What can we hope to get them to help to do to deal with this situation?
I think explaining the kinds of observations we were just talking about, this set of automatic spending cuts is supposed to kick in March. We've already got an economy that's growing too slow to support the job growth that working people need. Take another $85 billion out of that economy this year in 2013, 1 year alone, you're going to shift an economy that's already, struggling in second gear down to something lower than that. And that simply won't help. I also think it would be useful to talk about, sure, the president has always been on board of cutting out getting inefficiencies out of the system, out of the healthcare system.
Right.
There are spending cuts to be had there. But it's got to be balanced. And it's got to be balanced with new revenues. And the revenues, as the president said, they don't have to come from higher tax rates. We've already been there. But they ought to come from closing some of these loopholes, these expenditures that unfairly favor those at the very top of the scale, the folks who are already doing the best anyway.
Angela Rye and Jared Bernstein, I'm going to have to leave it there. Thanks for your